Hello, my name's Andy. Welcome to episode 20 of Keeping Water. In this week's episode, the fish focus is going to be about the rudd. I'll give a guide to the other social media accounts Keeping Water has, and in the weekly update, I'm going to be looking at winter feeding. There's timestamps in the description below if you'd like to choose particular topics. I'd be really grateful if you could subscribe if you enjoy the video and click on the like button, and please feel free to give me feedback or ask questions in the comment section below. Right, let's get started. Thank you for all your suggestions for naming the largest tench. The one I'm going with was from Instagram user who offered Dame Judy Tench, which both made me smile and fits my interpretation of her attitude being dignified and slightly matriarchal. I'm therefore going to call her Judy for short, as I'm nothing if not informal and slightly lazy. These are my rudd. There are 14 of them, 5 silver and 9 golden. They are currently about 5 to 6 inches long. Rudd are found widely in Europe and Middle Asia. They appear similar to roach, although differ in a number of ways, most obviously in having an upturned mouth and a dorsal fin that is more to the rear. Rudd prefer clear waters that are rich in plants. They feed on aquatic vegetation and living, usually insect, prey, in the upper water levels. Rudd can live up to 17 years and grow as big as 50 centimetres, although the average is around 25. However, to talk about my current fish, I need to go back 8 years to these rudd in this tank. There were 5, as it turned out 4 males and 1 female. In about 2.5 years they grew from about 3 inches long to about 5. Anyway, once my pond was built, they were first in it and seemed to enjoy the increased space and quickly grew larger, eventually reaching about 9 inches long. They also spawned twice, although only 1 year did this produce eggs that in turn produce fry. Around 30 survived and grew to between 2 to 3 inches. As I spoke about in the Tench fish focus, a disaster hit the pond in early 2018. However, although the larger rudd did not survive, I managed to net out 14 living fry. After a short stay indoors while I rebuilt the pond, the rudd returned to their home, where, like their parents, they have appeared to enjoy the increased space and have nearly doubled in size and provide an active and more visible presence in comparison to their often more secretive, larger pond mates. As I've discussed in previous videos, I plan to take a more targeted approach to their nutrition over the next couple of years, and therefore expect them to match their parents in size and possibly spawn themselves. I would quite like a larger shoal of mixed generation fish. However, as for all stocking related plans, this will be dependent on being able to maintain good water quality. As I talked about in more detail in episode 6, the rudd feed in a number of different ways, taking insects and pellets from the surface, but also from the bottom of the pond, as well as algae and plant matter from throughout the pond. Their favourite foods though are bloodworm and garden worms, which they are always first to get to, even before Mira. Naming the rudd will be slightly different to the other fish. This is because, aside from one or two, it's pretty difficult to differentiate between individual fish. Therefore, I'd really appreciate suggestions for naming the shoal as a whole. Please leave your ideas in the comment section below. I've set up a number of social media accounts for Keeping Water, in addition, obviously, to this YouTube channel. The aim being to share videos and photos to different groups of people, some of which may not use YouTube or necessarily find this channel. It's also fun to have different people to interact with and get an idea through likes, etc., what people react with and what they don't. For example, carp get more likes than tench, which get more than rudd, which all get more than photos of leaves. Although, if my personal social media accounts are anything to go by, cats beat everything. I tend to post when I release a new video, some screenshots just after a release, and also clips and stills whilst working on a new episode. To make things easier, I've recently started using Later, which is a social media account manager and allows me to post to 4 different account types really easily. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of this segment. First off, Instagram. It's my favourite site of the 4 and the one I probably get the most feedback on, aside from YouTube. It's a good place to show photos and videos, and hashtags seem to engage quite a lot of new people, even for someone with as few followers as me. The only downside is the inability to post links directly into posts, but that's a small negative. Next, Twitter. I used to have a personal Twitter account, but haven't used it for a couple of years as it can be somewhat toxic at times. My Keeping Water Twitter is very small fry at the moment, but it's growing slowly and I'm free from the Twitter dramas that rage around. Again, it's good for photos and videos and has the advantage of being able to have links in posts. And now Facebook. Like a couple of billion other people, I have a personal Facebook, but also have this page dedicated to Keeping Water itself. I'd really like others to engage with it, but must confess that I've done little to publicise it, until now that is. The Facebook page can do it all really, links, photos, videos, and a lot of good ways for others to engage with the page. Lastly, Pinterest. I must admit, I haven't really learnt how to use Pinterest, and only really post to it from the Later app. Little engagement on it so far, but that's pretty much my fault. I'd be delighted if you'd follow me on one of these. I now post the same content to each, so whichever you currently use and prefer would get all the posted content. I'll share the links in the description below. Finally, I'll just talk a little about Later. From it, you can post automatically to multiple different social media accounts in one go, schedule posts for later, e.g. when a YouTube video is released, and adjust each post for the particular platform, e.g. reduce character count for Twitter. There's paid and free versions. I currently use the free one, and aside from being unable to add multiple photos to one post and post videos, it does pretty much what I want it to, and I definitely recommend it. Feeding in winter is a problematic area of fish keeping. There's a number of different opinions, including don't feed at all under 10 degrees, or feed but only lower protein food, or feed anything but in smaller amounts, and lots more. There's 2 problems with feeding in winter. Firstly, that the fish are less able to digest food as their metabolism slows down, and that bacteria in the filter are less able to process the waste they produce. Fish eat during the winter in the wild, so they can digest small amounts of the right food without harm. But large lakes and rivers obviously don't have the filtration issues that garden ponds have. My approach, and this is not in any way a how-to guide, is that I feed cautiously, by which I mean I feed lower protein food and definitely in smaller amounts, but that I'm guided by the fish as much as temperature. If the fish appear to be actively looking for food, I'll offer food, but in much smaller amounts and not every day, therefore leaving them and the filters time to manage the food and subsequent waste. I also continue to do water changes on a weekly basis. It's tricky with my fish, and especially with the leaf net covering the pond at the moment, to get at an idea what the fish are doing. but luckily I've always got the GoPro. So, as you can see from this clip, Mira at least is having quite an active look for food. With that in mind, I threw in some wheat germ pellets. In what should be a shock to no one who watches the channel, Mira was first onto the food and tried to pick up everything. More surprising was that Koira wasn't far behind and was clearly feeling peckish. Both carp continued to look for the pellets and make sure they ate every one. The tench also fed a little, although looking less enthusiastic. Koira appeared so keen that she picked up an acorn, although after some determined chewing decided that it wasn't worth it and spat it out and went looking for something more edible. One connected topic I will cover here as well is flicking or flashing. I've previously said that my carp haven't displayed this, which is mostly true, by which I mean that they haven't displayed this in ways that are a reaction to parasites or infections. What they do, however, is some very gentle flicks off the floor of the pond after feeding, more specifically after feeding on sinking pellets. My take on this is that they pick up detritus while feeding, which gets into their gills, which they want to get rid of, and carp only have limited ways to do this, which means flicking. As you can see, this is quite gentle and only happens after feed and only a couple of times. I therefore don't rush to scrapes and treatments as a result. I'd love to hear your thoughts, both on winter feeding and on post-feeding behaviour like flicking, so please share them in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Keeping Water. I really do appreciate it. In next week's episode, the fish focus will be about the 2 youngest tench, and in the weekly update I'll be completing a full range of water tests and looking at the results. I hope you'll be joining me for that. Please think about subscribing so you don't miss its release. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.